Thanks for joining us. My name is Brandy Renfro, and I'm the president of MICA, as well as the director of communications for the Office of the Illinois Senate President. So Priyanka Deo is a University of Illinois alumni with distinguished credentials as a media and communications professional, and she now serves as the UIS Director of Student Media, overseeing the campus's independent digital news outlet, The Observer. Professor Deo also teaches courses within UIS's School of Communications and Media. She joined UIS from the Times of India group in New Delhi, India, where she played a key role in the Chief Operating Officer's office and hosted her own digital show. Deo is recognized as a national political commentator in India and a prominent voice among youth on social media. So with that, let's hear from our today's speaker, Priyanka Deo. Priyanka?
Thank you. Thanks so much, Brandy, for that very kind introduction. Apologies for being late. I was trying to connect. I think UIS has different Wi-Fi access in different buildings. So my laptop completely just lost Wi-Fi because I switched buildings. But thank you so much for having me. And I came to a MICA meeting, I think, Brandy, it was a couple of months ago, if I'm not mistaken, several months ago. I started at UIS as the Assistant Director of Public Relations, and now I have transitioned into faculty and become a professor. But one of the things that I feel UIS has spoken about quite a bit, and one of the things that I think resonated really when I came to the first MICA meet was how to engage youth. I think that is a big topic of discussion. It was a major topic of discussion prior to the Times of India group. I graduated with my master's from Harvard in 2017. With that, I was invited to be a part of the Prime Minister's election campaign. I am an alum of UIS. While I was at UIS, I worked for, at that time, Senator Obama. So I was very interested in working for a Prime Minister of India. I thought that it would be a tremendous experience, especially on his election campaign during an election year. So I made the jump and moved. I grew up in Chicago, but I made the jump, packed all my suitcases from my Harvard dorm room, and went all the way over to India. I didn't have any family in New Delhi, so it was a completely new place, and started working for the Prime Minister. One of the things the Prime Minister spoke about, and one of the things I felt that he was missing on his campaign. English is actually one of the national languages of India. And I felt that he did not have enough English presence, which resonated with youth. With that being said, now we are at a digital age where everyone sees stuff on their phones, everyone is engaged on their smartphones. A lot of youth are dependent on their smartphones. I think I come from the last generation of actually getting up in the morning and reading a newspaper, because 5 years later, nobody ever did that. And it's a gone art, I feel, at this point in time. So how do we tap into youth, and how do we tap into English-speaking youth in the country? India is extremely diverse. It has over, I think, 150 languages, more dialects than that. It's a very complex country that I feel is very different in that sense from the United States. I feel if you send out a message in English in the United States, everyone will understand. But that's not the case in India. So we really had to look at the percentages and the local sort of atmosphere over there, which I think differentiated the entire experience. But I found that the fundamentals of engaging with youth were the same. The first thing we did, and the first thing that I noticed, is that mainstream media, as is the case in the United States, is very polarized. It's untrustable now. I think even when I was a kid in the 90s or the 80s, we would always have the 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. news on, and by and large, it was trustable. I don't think that that's the case now. People do not, especially youth, they do not trust. They don't trust what they're seeing. They'll watch it, they'll consume it, but they don't trust it. And unfortunately now, digital media is monetized by watch time, right? It's monetized by the amount of time that you watch a clip. So whether you build trust or not is not really important to media organizations, which is a little sad to me. This is a big similarity that I found working in mainstream media after the election campaign. What I proposed to the Prime Minister was, let's take a camera, let's go out to some of these areas where mainstream media is supposedly reporting on, let's show people the truth. So we started a YouTube channel with 0 subscribers. I think my parents were the first subscribers, and that's who I forced them to subscribe. They didn't even want to. We started a YouTube channel for youth in English in India. And it involved me taking a camera, going, interviewing people. The prime minister was known for his 5 foundational schemes. He set up millions of toilets across the country and ended open defecation. He's set up electricity in villages that never had them. He set up houses, brick houses versus stick houses that people had, and a couple of other things. I wanted to know if that was still the case, because as an Indian origin youth growing up in Chicago my entire life, I had not even seen India for what it was. I didn't know anything about my own, origin country. So I was curious and I said, I'm willing to travel to all of these places. Let's go see if the toilets still work. Let's go see if the lights still work. Let's go see if the electricity is still there. Let's go see if the houses have been built and if, people have houses to live in now. Once we started doing that, we found that our channel was actually going viral because we were showing things, and we found out that mainstream media was reporting on things without ever having sent a reporter there, I guess you could say. So without any on-ground staff, they were still reporting. And I don't know how they were getting their sources. I don't know how they were getting their information. But when we showed things, we found that we were consistently outnumbering, and in terms of engagement, likes, and views, outnumbering most of the mainstream media platforms. So much to the fact that the Prime Minister himself has shared some of my work. And then I became an active voice for youth in the country of India. I felt that that was an important thing to do because a lot of them had a voice. They were interested in talking about issues. They just didn't know how. I came here to UIS because I have a 3-year-old daughter right now. I played tennis for UIS. I wanted her to learn tennis. We always wanted to relocate back. As I said, I grew up in Chicago. My entire family is here. So when I relocated back, I definitely wanted and was interested in coming, to work in student media. And what I find now with students is that they don't really know how to, it's very foreign to them if they're looking at a story to go out and talk to people, to go out and actually get sources, go out to the actual event and report on it. It's a foreign concept to them, whereas to you and I, it may just be common sense. I think that this is something that I'm working to change. And I don't want to go on talking about, all the things that I've done. I hope that we have, Brandy, a little bit of a question answer kind of a session here. But I think that this is really important, that we need to understand that youth think a lot differently these days. I think it's not bad, it's not good. That's up to your opinion and your perspective. But the bottom line is they do think different. They do consume news differently. I asked a girl how she consumed her news, and she told me it was off of TikTok. A guy dressed up as a fish reads the headlines, and that's how she gets her news. She doesn't read any paper. She doesn't look at any online sites. She looks at a guy on TikTok dressed up like a fish. So it is just a strange concept, but this is the way news is going. This is the way digital is going. The other thing is attention spans. I think attention spans as of 5 years ago was about 6% or 6 seconds. I'm sorry, not 6%. And now it's down to 2.7 seconds. This is why you see so many videos that are nonsensical videos that come up on your smartphones or come up on your feeds online. And then, at the end of it, you're like, what did I just watch? Right? But the thing is, you watched it, right? And it's all about consumption now. It's not about building trust. So I found that the YouTube channel I started in India, it built a lot of trust because it was not the most high quality. The camera work was not the best. It was not professional. It's not like a BBC mini documentary, but it was good enough to show people the truth. It was good enough that people believed that I was out there talking to people, finding things out, walking around. We did a lot of live feeds as well, where we would just turn on the camera so everybody could see the channel, whoever was tuning in and watching. They could see things live in real time, and we'd publish that as well. It was incredibly successful, which reminded me that, in journalism, you really need to tell the truth. It is the 4th pillar of democracy, and it's really sad to see the way that it has eroded over time. That's where I think local publications have a lot of credibility. I think a lot more people trust the Illinois Times versus the BBC at times, on certain issues and certain articles. Of course, the scope of the publications are different, but I think in terms of trust, A lot of people, and this is the case in India too, they trust their local publications a lot more than they trust their national publications. I think it's just very similar in other countries, what people feel about the news. And, I'm one of those people that is always working to revive it back. I think that digital is an important part of social media as well. And I think that, we need to use it in a way that builds trust and garners trust with people. It shouldn't be used in a way to spread misinformation or disinformation. That is just savvy. And it's also a way that people can voice their opinions. People that don't maybe go out in public and talk about these things, people who are not public officials, it should be used to voice your opinion. That is why, and that is how digital platforms started. Twitter was a platform that had limited characters where you could talk about issues. It was meant to be that, and look at what it has transformed to. Facebook, all of these other things, all of these other platforms, they were actually meant for information sharing in an easy way. And they have transformed, unfortunately, into something else altogether. But now that they have transformed, my point is use them for the benefit. Don't use them to spread misinformation at all, which is what I see happening. And the only solution I see to solve it is independent journalists like myself who come out and speak the truth. With that being said, in my personal, experience, I had a lot of trolls. I delivered my baby in India as well because I was there during COVID. I couldn't come back because pregnant women could not take the injection at that time. So I was literally stuck in India. I could not come back to Illinois to deliver my child. It was an experience for sure, but I remember the worst comment that I have ever gotten was from, I think I had done an issue-based video. It was on the Delhi riots, which was, there were massive, massive riots taking place all over the city to where civilians were getting hurt. There were fatalities as well. And I was reporting on it. I remember I did a video on it on my Instagram, and I got a comment. I was pregnant at that time. I got a comment from a troll saying, I hope the baby inside of you loses all oxygen and dies. And that really scared me because I said, man, I'm opening my voice and I'm using my voice on all of these issues, but I don't have security. If a crazy person comes and finds out where I live, what's going to happen? I mean, I'm a 5-month pregnant lady at this point. So I think a lot of youth do not speak up about certain issues because they are afraid of these trolls. They're afraid of what people will think in their classrooms. They're afraid of what professors will think of them, because once you put something out on your social media, it's out there. It gets saved. Even if you delete it, it's still saved somewhere on the World Wide Web. People can still retrieve it. People can still find it. I think a lot of youth are afraid to speak up on a lot of things. They're afraid to comment on a lot of things. And this is something that I really want my students to feel empowered with, that you should not be afraid, because while I did get a whole bunch of trolls and some really crazy people out there, I would say I did find a whole band of support as well, to which I'm lucky that nothing happened to me. But I can understand if, people don't want to be trolled on their social media as well. So it's a really sort of double-edged, sticky kind of sword that you have to navigate through. And with that said, I see a lot of comments, Brandy. I see, I'm just wondering if people have any questions.
Yeah, so we have a couple questions in the chat.
Cool.
Michelle wants to know, or I think it's Michelle, I think many reporters are telling the truth, but how do we get youth to participate in mainstream media and become reporters? Or is that something we need to pivot on?
I think that's a great question. And we were just talking about that the other day. I think that universities really need to hire, because journalism, communication, and media, unlike, I would say, the sciences, right? Or unlike mathematics, you learn most of the job on the spot, right? You learn most of the job while you're working in the field. If you've learned to lead a newsroom, you know very well how to edit articles, right? So I think journalism, unlike a lot of careers out there, you learn way more practically and when you're on the field or in the field than you do reading theory about it. I think that communication and media programs across the country really need to hire more experts in the field that can teach students. We need people that have been video journalists before and digital experts before and multimedia journalists We need to hire those kind of people to teach our students, here's how to use a camera. This is how you need to frame your story. This is how a story should go. This is how a video should go. This is how an article needs to be written using the inverted pyramid sort of stance, because a lot of students don't even know that. Essay writing is very different from writing an article for a newspaper. So I think that universities need to focus on hiring people that are in the field, and the younger people you hire, the better, because that's how I think you're going to motivate a lot more students to get out in the field. Because as you know, journalism salaries are, I think at the time I graduated, they were officially the worst in the country, the lowest in the country. So it is, you know, why should someone who, I got my degree from from Harvard as well as the University of Southern California, and I have a third master's from the London School of Economics. University of Southern California has the best journalism school in the world. And University of Southern California also published an article saying that journalism salaries are the worst in the country officially. So it was so deflating while I was there. But because of that, most of the students went into consulting. My first job, because I had so many student loans, was a consultant in Washington, D.C., just to pay off my student loans, even though I always wanted to get into journalism. So I do think that conversations from career advisors who are hired in these universities, professors who are hired, adjunct staff who are hired, I really think that these people need to have solid on-ground experience so that they can practically talk to students about what the career is like, what their career trajectory needs to be, and you know, the real reasons why they need to come and work in media and journalism, and what their options are. I mean, you don't really need to be a print journalist. You can also be a multimedia one. You can be both in today's day and age. Or you can just be, you know, one or the other when you feel like it. A newsroom, I think now is way more flexible than it had been, I guess, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I hope that answers your question.
It does. So also, how do we gain the trust back? I mean, I think that's one of the things that media in general is going to have a really rough time with. And because not only do we have to gain the trust back, but we also have leaders in our country that continue to talk about how it's fake media, or, you know, it's hard to restore that trust. So how do you do that?
I think, well, one of the things that I did, the solution I found is, hey, let's go there. And when we went there, we found there was no reporter from BBC. There was no presence from NPR. There was no presence from the Times of India. There was no presence from TV9, which is one of the biggest channels in India. So where are these, you know, where are these anchors getting their news from? Where are they getting their feed? Are they using stringers? Are they using, you know, who are they calling? Because India that way was very unorganized. There's not an agency that you could call that would, you know, necessarily know this information. I think part of the reason why there is a lack of trust also, and Michelle, you were the one that asked this question, right? Part of the reason why there's a lack of trust is because people are calling it out left, right, and center on their social media. They're not afraid to call it out. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of youth especially saying, hey, this is not what we heard. Or, hey, you know what? I'm in downtown Springfield right now. This never happened, right? This is something that newsrooms are constantly dealing with. Now you have a person that is hired specifically to monitor social media and to look at, you know, where the hashtags are, what people are talking about, and what people are saying about their own channel. That position never existed before. I think that there needs to be an active person looking at that. That's not to encourage newsrooms to lie about it. But I also do think that newsrooms somehow need to work with independent journalists. I think newsrooms do need to start training their staff consistently, especially countries and places where journalism schools are not necessarily the best, like India. They need to train their staff before they send them out there. I also think that someone needs to at least monitor or be very active in terms of what is being said on social media, in terms of what is going out there. I don't think that because newsrooms keep pumping out stories on social media, right? There's a thing now that you have to pump out 20 stories every single day, no matter what. So I think with that, the quality also has degraded a little bit. I mean, imagine a person having to pump out 20 stories. Reporters 30 years ago didn't have to do that. They could take 2 weeks on an investigative piece. And that's why I think the quality of articles was really good. I don't think that that's the case now, because it's turned into more quantity than quality. So I do think that newsrooms need to hold back, because personally, I would like to see 2 quality articles in the day than like 30 things that are crap, pardon my French, or just clickbait, you know?
We have another question, Brandy, from Amy. She says, what can we do to support having thriving local news media so they don't continue to be bought by big national publishers?
I think that, and this is something I think, Brandy, we spoke about in the meeting that I had come to at that time. And I think Illinois Times had presented. I do think that local media, look, you guys have to look at, if you're running a local news outlet, first of all, you have to look at your demographics, right? This is something that we did in India. Is the population more into consuming traditional news? When I say traditional, newspapers, something they like to feel in their hands, not digital, not online. Or are they consuming more things on your phone? So one of the things that I actually had a follow-up meeting with Illinois Times, and she was asking me, you're so good at videos, how do you engage youth? And I told her, well, youth watch videos. And now I think even, my parents watch YouTube all the time. So if your stories can somehow be transferred onto digital, if someone can even read the video or present the video with a couple of pictures or a few images, I think you're going to tap into youth, because I think youth, the good part about it is that they are very active in the United States as well as in India. They are so well informed right now because of their smartphones. They want to know more. They want to have a voice. They want to be able to speak up. But I think the way that local news can really thrive is engaging their youth. And the only way you can do that is digital media, because they are not of the generation now. I teach college students now, they don't even bring pens to class to write stuff down. I had a pop quiz the other day where I said it has to be written down because I didn't want anyone to cheat on their laptops. Nobody of the 23 students I had, none of them had a pen. So not one of them. So it is just a different generation that we're dealing with. They are a digital generation all throughout. Local media needs to tap into digital. That has a double-edged sword in that it is free. You can go on digital. You can publish content for relatively cheap, right? What is unknown and the problem with digital is that you do get engagement and likes, but how do you monetize that? So that is a problem that newsrooms consistently face, that if we do go on digital, it's an outgoing cost all the time. But I think if you want a newspaper to thrive, if you want local news to thrive, if you want it to be active amongst all the citizens, it does need to have solid digital presence. The challenge with that is, how do we afford it? How do we pay for it?
And then
Well, I think one of the other two, go ahead, Brandy.
that's okay, Michelle, you first.
I think one of the other challenges too is it's great to talk about getting people engaged and having reporters do video and all of that, but just getting reporters in a newsroom of
In the
any
first
age
place.
right now
Yep.
is crazy. I mean, you can't find people who will do it anymore. And I don't know if that's the environment of the negativity around media. It's definitely part of it is part of salary, right? And things like
Yep.
that. I mean, I left the profession because of hours and salary, right? And then came back to do it part-time just because I love it. But
Mhm.
I mean, I just see a real miss for all of us because we have that, plus we have, how do we know who the people are out there? Because you talk about a lot of young folks and a lot of people are putting videos and information out there, but is that information the correct information? Like we have so many
Not all the
people
time.
who are who can't differentiate between what is and what isn't.
And the other problem is it opinion-based or fact-based, right? A lot of these social media influencers parade on their opinion, and the people that follow them believe that to be the story. I think that what really helped with the Times of India when we pivoted towards digital is we actually got in touch with some of the social media influencers that we saw and that we vetted, that were giving out really valuable news, that were very, very well researched, that had a following. I think we brought them on board. We brought them on board as consultants. So we didn't bring them on board full time, because we said that, we want you to be under our umbrella in the Times of India. But at the same time, we don't want you to lose your voice as just, I'm another reporter for the Times of India, or I'm another multimedia journalist for the Times of India. We still want you because you've worked hard for your following. Kudos to you. we really vetted the good ones, and we found that a lot of them were willing to come on board at a relatively low cost. With that, we were able to piggy bank off of their followers, who then followed the Times of India. And then we collaborated with them on, hey, can you mention Times of India? Or can you link out to another story on your Instagram? Or can you link out to another story on your Twitter? Or can you post this story for us on Twitter, which would be our story, which would be a Times of India story that we were not getting maybe the engagement we required on. And this was relatively low cost. It just by and large took a lot of coordination, but it didn't require money. That's how we got more people to follow us and more people to sign on to the Times of India app, through the influence of this social media influencer. So I think if local news can also do that, because there's one, I think, really influential person at UIS as well. He's a student over here, but I think he has a tremendous TikTok following. I think if a local news outlet reaches out to someone like that, or, someone like me, I have about 100,000 plus followers on my Instagram. And if you work with these sort of people, why wouldn't we want just a consultant sort of a thing? It's more money for us, right? We work hard on putting our own videos together, so it helps us. So we found that a lot of these influencers were willing to come on board, especially, and I'm talking about the influencers that give out news, not the influencers who do, fashion blogging or whatever, just the relevant ones. We found that a lot of them were willing to actually come on board, and they didn't mind sharing their followers with us, which was a big thing, which is how we drove up our engagement and how we eventually drove up our numbers in terms of turning it into monetization for us.
Is there a software or a program that you recommend that would that does like social media monitoring and listening? I know we have used Hootsuite in the past for my job, but I'm just wondering if there's others that you might recommend.
There's so many. I think if you Google it, you'll find like 8 Google pages of software that you can use. I liked Sprout. Sprout, I think, was the most effective and easiest one in terms of navigation, especially I think a local news outlet just needs to know the facts, the basics, right? So unless you're a huge organization like the Times of India that needs to look into perhaps other metrics, I think Sprout would be the most beneficial one, which is what I've used personally as well. And I've never had an issue with it. But it does give you those engagement figures, and it does give you a comparison of this type of video did really well amongst your audience versus that type, or this demographic really loved this sort of video versus that one. You can see those sort of analytics. And then once you start using those data analytics to make better videos, then you can, Illinois Times, and I keep using Illinois Times just because that was the last MICA meeting I had. But, a local outlet, I suppose, can start maybe focusing on some more content creation on those topics that they know are going to drive engagement towards them. If you have more engagement, it's a better chance that you're going to get more monetization.
Priyanka, when you think about just media today and how maybe the new direction we need to move in, and you talk about engaging young people, a lot of folks on this call aren't necessarily news organizations. I think the two Michelles on the call definitely are from news organizations, but how do we, in our jobs, say at Horace Mann or with the state of Illinois, engage the youth to try to get that kind of storytelling told on a regular basis and get them kind of engaged in what is happening every day?
Start coming to universities, local universities that have communication and media programs. Kids need to, one of the things that I found really beneficial with USC was that we constantly had journalists, and not necessarily how much they got paid, but we constantly had journalists journalists on the field who are active in different areas, video journalists, print journalists, whatever, people that were in radio, people that were on television. One of my adjunct professors used to be a TV reporter for 35 years, who I'm still in touch with. Once you get these people exposed to the students, because I'm finding it's very hard for a professor to convince students you need to go, a professor can only do so much, right? And keep in mind, most of the professors in any journalism program, including at USC, they have an academic background. They don't have a journalism background, maybe perhaps a little bit, but not a majority, right? So you really need to start talking to these students first off and telling them, these are the rewards you're going to get out of the program. The one good thing is that Gen Z cares more about the rewards that they're going to get. What is the job satisfaction that I'm going to get? There are plenty of studies out there that show that Gen Z cares less about money and more about job satisfaction. So that's the one good thing that journalism has going for it, that you're not going to get much in terms of monetary satisfaction, but no day is the same in a workplace. That's something one of my professors who was a reporter for like 40 years told me, and I'll never forget that to date. That really resonated with me because I can't be in an office space where every day is the same. I can't. I get bored. And that's one of the reasons why I went into journalism. So I feel if you have that one-on-one personal connect, or even if you do a Zoom session with students and answer some of their worries, their questions, what they have, what's in their head about becoming journalists, I think you're going to get genuinely interested people who are going to do quality work for you that can then be trained to, write stories. That's the other half of it. But I do think that you do need to start, not you, but, if you want more engagement, you do need to do it one-on-one. It's like saying, I want to recruit students from India. Well, the way to do that is to go there and talk to them about UIS, right? You can't do it via Zoom session because I think online and person to person, there's still some value, especially when people are looking at their personal goals and how they're going to grow. There is value in doing that one-on-one FaceTime with them in person.
Do we have other questions, guys? Feel free to go off mute and ask your question as well. All right.
Priyanka, what classes are you teaching? Like, is it something that, say, and I don't know, and you said you talked to Michelle from the Illinois Times after our session last time. What kinds of things can we do to help you? And I say this, but I'm only at NPR for a couple hours every day, but to help you maybe engage some of your students with what we have available here to get them interested and excited.
Cross collaborations, right? One of the assignments I would just assume, because Times of India had a university in India called Bennett University, which had a strong journalism program. So one of the reasons why their journalists consistently got hired was because by the time they graduated, either whether they were undergrad or grad, they had a reel that they could show. That one radio piece, one video piece, one, whatever that so they had done all of that. And they were very much in tune to how to script a radio piece. They knew how to produce a radio program, if you're talking about NPR. They knew how to put together in terms of editing a video. They knew how to put together in terms of editing audio, an entire news program with advertisements, they knew how to do all of that. This is what a newsroom requires, right? This is what NPR requires. And you'd love if someone already knew how to do that coming in, that you didn't have to train, right? It's just cheaper. It takes less time. So it's a win-win for everyone. I think that a university that does have this type of program, if we're talking about UIS and NPR, the benefit of NPR is that it is on campus, but it is also an independent outlet. Why not have a cross collaboration where I'm requiring some of my multimedia reporting students to have a radio piece done and send them over to NPR and have them actually be trained on, sitting there. It's very intimidating to sit. I think it's not that intimidating to sit in a TV studio, but it is very intimidating to sit in an audio studio just because there are so many dials and buttons that you see when you go in off the bat. But if they know how to do that, and if they're comfortable on how to do that, they themselves can realize, maybe I do want to go into radio. Maybe I do want to go into TV. Maybe TV was too stressful for me. I might want to stay in print. This is something that USC afforded us when I went there. We constantly had to make pieces. We didn't learn in the classroom. We learned the format. We learned how to write. Go off and do your piece. If it's good enough, it can be published. If you have one spelling error, you fail. So I think if a university works directly with news outlets like NPR and they cross collaborate on assignments, I think you're going to have the benefit for you guys is you're going to have students, coming to you where you can talk to them while they're there on, hey, maybe you should work for NPR, which is a win for the university as well. And it's a win, most importantly, for the student because their career is kind of set. They have that experience that they're getting along with their education.
For sure.
Any other thoughts or questions, guys? A little bit more time. Nancy has a question. She asks, are your students coming from communications and media department or from across the campus?
Uh, both. Nancy, the answer to that is both. I think I teach the students in the communication and media program by and large. Those are my students, but I'm finding that a lot of students, there was one, I think, sociology major that entered the speech and debate team, got interested in communication, and I think ultimately he got a second degree in communication, or I can't remember what he did, but he then has, or he has now gone in this year as of May of 2024, got accepted into the Harvard School of Medicine, or I think he's studying to be a dentist. I'm not sure what that school is. So he came to me because I was a Harvard alum. I remember briefly talking to him, but he said that, the speech and debate team helped me so much. And oral comm, which is what I teach right now, helped me so much that my interview at Harvard was a piece of cake. And I might, in terms, I'm doing medical school, but I might take a few electives in communication and media because I'm finding that being able to speak and being able to communicate is very beneficial. So while most of the students come in from comm and media, we do try and get students from that are not majoring in comm and media to kind of get interested in at least taking a minor in communication, because it is a life skill at this point. I feel that communication in some time also is going to be a lost art just because people are so used to typing things and not speaking. I asked my students how they date these days because I'm still from the generation that, a boy or a girl approaches you and says hi. But I think one guy had done it. Out of that, 17 of my 18 in that class said we've never approached another person. They thought it was weird to just approach another person and say hi. So you see the amount that people are changing, and the way that communication, I would say, is changing. And to say whether that's bad or good, like I said, that's up to your opinion. But the fact is that it's changing, right? So media definitely and news definitely has to work along with it, whether we like it or not, or whether we find that it's natural or not. And I was like, really? You've never just gone up to someone and said hi, even if you like them? They were like, no. So I said, what do you do? Oh, we stalk them. We go on their Instagram. We find out their names through other people. And then we look at what their interests are. And then we DM them on Instagram, direct message them on Instagram. And then we get their number. And then we text for some time. And then we decide to meet. So the whole process before they even say hi to each other face to face takes several weeks, I think, to attain. But this is the way communication is changing. People are going on TikTok and looking at people dressed up as fish to get their world headlines right now. They don't go to a paper. They don't even know that Illinois Times and local publications are located at, in the grocery store when you're walking out. They don't have that information. That's why, Michelle, it's very valuable that journalists come and talk to them about these things. Hey, pick up an Illinois Times from Country Market or Harvest Market before you leave. Some students just may do that, and their world may open up.
Well, hopefully you're sharing those nuggets with your students as well.
I am. I am. I'm trying to.
Thank you for that.
I think so, Nancy. I think
Yeah.
so. I think if they're aware, especially I teach the newspaper class right now, and our newspaper has gone digital. So we are an online publication right now. But I do think they would be highly interested in coming to a MICA meeting if they know about it. So if you allow me, Brandy, I will tell them to, come to the meeting and give them the limited time offer. I think some of them might come.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have them and learn from them. As you said, I think that you've taught us, if nothing else today, that that's the best way to move forward is listen and learn from them. So I think that's a good time.
I'm also available anytime if you want me to come and talk to them. I'd be happy to talk to them just about the journey that I've been on from student to, radio for years and then going into PR and then kind of straddling the fence on both sides. So
yeah. That would be great, Michelle. We'll definitely coordinate and do that. Thank you so much.
Good. Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up. So thank you so much, Priyanka, for joining us. I loved hearing about your story and your journey, and definitely picked up a few tips on how to communicate, how to change our communications so that we can effectively reach kids. So thank you
you
for
very
that.
much.
Yeah. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. I put that in the chat if you wanted to click on that, as well as sign up for our e-newsletter. You would just need to select the Get the Latest Updates button from our website, and then you would be subscribed.